Welcome, everyone, to How I Made It Through. And we have a very special guest today, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation that we are going to have. So, I have with me today Kimberly Braun. She is a minister, an author, a speaker, retreat facilitator, and meditative coach. Lives to inspire others to connect to and live from divine love at their center. After spending more than 10 years as a monastic nun, she added to her formation with a master's in theology with special concentration in the adult spiritual journey. She is a TEDx speaker and former meditation faculty at the renowned Omega Institute. And I would love to just welcome Kimberly here today. So thank you, Kimberly, for being here.
Great to be with you, Bernadette, taking our friendship to deeper levels. Thank you for
Yeah.
this invitation.
Yeah. There is so much, we always talk, before I start a podcast where I'm always talking with the guest ahead of time. And I needed to say to her, let's get this taped because we're starting to get into just for background, I met Kimberly through the International Association of Near-Death Studies, where I was a panelist last year, and Kimberly was the facilitator of the entire panelist group. And it was coming to know a little bit about her story there that made me really want to bring her here and for us to have a deeper conversation. And again, we will be at the IANS conference this year.
Yes, we will.
So Kimberly, I'd love for you to start wherever you feel comfortable. But I would love to know a little bit about, your childhood and that awakening that you felt then, and what called you to becoming a nun or going to the monastery.
Well, as you probably know, as we go along this time journey, the breadth of stories that make up the tapestry of our lives grows vast, right? And for me, there's one of the things that I think is a integral part of my life in this incarnation is there's a simplicity in my orientation. Not to say that I've always been simple in it, but I have been aware of this simplicity. And that simplicity is that I've had a very deep, continual realization that being alive has two purposes that are quite mysterious, but they're paradoxically the same, in that we're alive to be and become as God or in God. And I use the word God. If you're listening and God's not a word that works for you, I get it. I don't use God in my service that often because of what it can evoke that's less than what is meant by the word. But for lack of a better word, I use that. And there's been a simplicity, and I've never really moved away from that simplicity. I have been complicated amidst that simplicity. I have had moments of brilliant light and confusion and seeming loss. And, I've had the whole human experience. But I can honestly say that I've never felt outside that orientation. So there's a certain implicit consolation that comes with realizing why you're alive. Mm-hmm. There's a certain relaxation into life, a certain willingness and desire to be open to the adventure. And a lot of those foundational experiences happened when I was little. So I was at a time of formation when I had, like most children, I had great joys and I had sorrows. Some really great, some just passing sorrows. Like I didn't get the pencil I wanted in the pencil box. But amidst anything that I was connecting to myself, wow, that's really wonderful, or wow, that really hurts my feelings, or wow, that leaves me, wherever there was a noticing of life and myself, there was an experience of being in relationship with the divine. It's always been, and I'm saying that I think in a new way, even here in this moment. I was having illuminations like that where time would stop from my earliest recollections, where I would be in any situation. It could be at family, it could be at church, it could be at school, it could be in nature, it could be playing with friends, it could be being alone. And I'd have these, time would stop and there'd be a deeper penetration of what reality was. And I got it. I was touched by it, influenced by it, impacted by it in a way that it captured my curiosity and gave me the kind of joy that I knew I wanted to live in, or gave me understanding. I'm always somebody that's wanted to understand. That gives me context and the feeling of safety and freedom. And one of those instances was, did I share with you my leaf story?
If you did, let's share it again.
Okay. It's really a good one. And it's one that's unpacked for me. Like any timeless experiences, and I know you can relate, they continue to unpack for us.
Yes.
I was a total geek. I am such a lover of learning, and total geek when I was little. Total geek. I mean, I was up to reading 20 books a week. I was such a geek, in the best sense of that word. And I loved going to school. So when autumn came around, it was time to go to school. I was like, finally, oh my God, finally, I get to be back in school. That was my feeling. And everything about it was alluring and happy making for me, from the cigar box to the syllabi to the walking to school. And autumn as well was my favorite season back then as a little girl. In Cincinnati, it was the typical autumn with the change of leaves and the picking up of the air and the coolness and the feeling of change. And I remember one day I was walking home from school, and it was either kindergarten or first grade. I can't remember which. And it was one of those days when the world around me was so alive with change. And I was experiencing the dance of nature. It was, all nature was dancing. And it so touched me that I started dancing my way home. And I began whirling like a Sufi dervish, though I was very Catholic, so I didn't know what Sufism was back then. But looking back retrospectively, that was the only response that came to me in this dance. I was like, I have to be part of this dance. So I was whirling my way home, and I was moving more and more into a state of bliss. I got to the end of our cul-de-sac, and in this really deeply moved state of, it was delicious and it was presence, I stopped whirling and I just started looking out on the world, taking it all in. I was like, oh. And as I was just receiving all this beautiful light-filled nature, a tree jumped out at me. It grabbed my attention. It was like the tree was lit up, and the lighting up magnetized my focus on it. And then as that happened, simultaneously, one leaf magnetized my focus, pulled me deeply in. And I these are my words now, I really merged with the leaf. I mean, the way it was teetering, it felt energetically I was just it. Though I didn't lose a sense of myself as Kim. I was Kim back then. And so I was there, and I was in the experience of this leaf. And then unprecipitately, it broke off its branch and began moving like this down to the ground. And unsolicited, deep within me, from a place I had no idea existed, a really deep existential grief rose up. And this grief came from like my gut deep within. And it was in the form, I'm giving words to the wordless. It was in the form of, is that it? Is that all this life is about? Dying? That was
Mm-hmm.
and the moment that breath of a question arose from a real deep sadness, time stopped. And I felt like it was like this, like these veils went whoosh.
Mm-hmm.
And it plunged me into a deeper experience. And in that very moment, I experienced it. The leaf was in God and God was in the leaf.
Oh.
But without
Mm-hmm.
making a jump in my mind, because this was not cognitive, I was not thinking
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things. I had
Mm-hmm.
a direct experience that I was in God and God was me,
Mm-hmm.
both ways. And in that insight, all this existential grief disappeared and it's never returned. Disappeared 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And it filled me with so much joy, this knowing that I knew that's all I wanted to do with my life is be and becoming God,
Hmm.
becoming the divine.
So when you were thinking that at the time, did you have a word for God? Did you know anything, or you just were following the feeling?
That was it. It was God. There was a twofold sense of this God. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say this is where my rich Catholic background came in
Mm-hmm.
service to me.
Yeah.
It was an all encompassing creative force that
Wow.
had personal quality to it, like that there was benevolence,
Mm-hmm.
goodwill, care for me, and that somehow I was also it. So it was impersonal and personal at the same time.
I
And
know that experience now,
yeah,
but I did not know it then as a child. And so it's amazing to think at that age you had that experience. So
right,
yeah, yeah.
right.
Because I mean, you were what, 6 years old at the
Yeah,
most?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
incredible, a great grace and a great gift. And in uh, in complement to that, other graces were immediate with it. Not only the washing of the fear of death, but also the confusion about what life is about, the
Hmm.
toil and the dark night around these things that usually happen in our normal progression. Like those have never really existed for me in that
Hmm.
way. But in addition, something quite lovely happened in that I noticed that I was filled with joy in this insight. Like I
Hmm.
actually had self reflection. So when I moved from the state of bliss where it was all wordless, when I came out of it, my first reflection was, this makes me happier than anything I could possibly ever imagine. I'm going to devote my whole life to this.
Hmm.
And I want others to know this joy.
Hmm.
I kind of liken it to like when you're a little kid and you have your favorite ice cream cone and you're like,
Yeah.
chocolate chip is the best. You've got to have this. Like it was that kind of innocent feeling.
Right.
Great
Hmm.
grace to have my very first reflection be that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And even as I tell it, it fills me with joy. It's never paled. Like, these experiences, they never pale.
Hmm.
So it
Yeah.
offers a container in which my evolution could take place. Yes, very pivotal. And then there were minor, I would say, not so cosmologically grand illuminations that happened, especially in that period from ages 5 up to about 10. And then things got really big again around my confirmation in junior high school. And then things got really big in my teens. But, it was almost like every time I had a moment of real sadness,
Hmm.
the beloved stepped in and said, no, my love, no,
Hmm.
not alone. This is what this really means.
Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah, it's you're just bringing me back to those moments, reminding me of those moments. One when I was a child, one as I was going through confirmation. That so keep sharing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well,
Mhm,
each of the stories are so full. There's so much breadth and depth to them, but each
mhm,
of them are where my timeless nature erupted, and time was simply a one variable in the life
mhm,
experience. And this happened enough and in dramatic ways that it really formed an orientation for me. So when I went through a really dark night in my teens, uh, I I actually love that this is a part of my story, because when I share my unitive experiences, and if you're listening, this could be you as well, with the miracles and the visions and the this and the that and all that, it's easy to say, why not me? Or it's easy to say, oh, that's amazing for her.
right.
It's easy to create a distance. But
Mm,
my real realization is our capacity, our human nature is all the same. And on an
mhm,
essence level, we're divine. And there's just such a manifold way divinity shows up,
mm,
always in its fullness. So all of us have these capacities for touching in on our essential nature. But with going through normal, quote unquote, development markers psychologically and emotionally, it then reveals that the divine unfolding in form is very mysterious. And I went through a really, really dark night where a wound about a self doubt about me as a personality, me as an individual, not my divine nature, but the Kimberly who's curious and passionate and adventurous and big personality in some ways,
mhm.
that part of me was not necessarily holy.
Oh, yeah. I understand that at a very deep level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went into some deep doubt about
Mhm.
that. And
Yeah.
part of it was the collective consciousness. We,
Mhm,
our Western culture, riddled with
mm,
guilt and shame
mhm.
around aspects of our personalities that are really divine.
Yeah.
Part of it was some of my wound. And what was amazing was, I suffered early childhood loss in some dramatic ways. My grandma died when I was 3.5. My mom almost died when I was 4. There were these. No wonder I had such a
Yeah.
dramatic experience at age 6, because probably in a very unconscious way, there was a chance that wound was going to take really deep root,
Mhm,
and the beloved didn't want me to have that level of unconsciousness around
mm,
life, wanted me
mm.
to be informed. But the some of the wound was still there, and part of it was guilt. I was like, what did I do wrong? The little girl, little child that sees something unfortunate happen and blames themselves because they don't
Yeah.
know how to process their own rage or sadness or grief or anything,
Mhm,
confusion. And that wound reared its head in my development. It started lightly when I was 15, 16, and plunged me in a certain hell for about 2.5 years, where I wondered about me as a personality, not me as the in the divine.
mhm,
But there was something within that, Bernadette, that even as I was in my wounded part of myself, there was something in me that also realized I could never lose God.
mhm,
So I hit on uh, edges on myself. And I think part of the reason I could go into so much darkness was because I was so firmly rooted in the knowing that nothing can ever really be lost.
Mm-hmm.
I was never able to lose that insight, but I pushed on these edges of what I would say is probably self-hatred,
Mm-hmm.
real deep self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I was in a sea of miracles happening through me, I had gifts of prophecy and laying on of hands and dramatic experiences in prayer at night, and that I was also straddling this deep self-hatred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I don't think it's uncommon for that to. I think there's something that the divine wants us to understand about that side a little bit. I don't know. I don't know.
yes, yeah, I discovered that so. And I ended up overdosing.
Wow.
The pain of my own separation from self, because my life was so richly juicy in the divine, the pain of experiencing such a separation, I tried really hard to work through it, really hard. And I was left in the darkness of the confusion
Mm-hmm.
for 2.5 years. And in that, it got to be too painful.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, it was too much. The pain
Yeah.
was too much because I was so intimate with not being separated from self and God that this wound of separation and the knowing out piece, it was like being abandoned by God.
Mm-hmm.
And
Although you weren't, it was your own thoughts
it
that
was
you
my
were.
own thoughts. It was my own
Yeah.
thoughts of what I didn't have the skill set.
Yeah.
And I did turn in all the right directions when I was going through, because I'm like, I'm in trouble here. And
Mm-hmm.
first I turned, I was I was my first year in college, and I turned to my faith community, which happened to be one of these non-denominational big Christian churches
Mm-hmm.
that I was not fundamentalist, but happened to be pretty fundamentalist.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, all the support I got was, don't think that way, you're sinning. Which was lacking in skillfulness, right? Because when somebody is experiencing a wounded part of themselves and they're being vulnerable, opening to help, you don't help them by saying, just stop it. You're doing something wrong by being what you are right now. My self-hatred was already great enough. It just kind of compounded.
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, okay, it wasn't safe
Mm-hmm.
to confide in my community. And then what I did is I went to the mental health clinic.
Oh.
I was smart
Mm-hmm.
enough to know there's something more going on here that I need real help with.
Mm-hmm.
And I got assigned to a counselor that was not so skillful. And he did the kind of tough love thing, thinking that's all I really needed, was a little pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of way of approaching me. And I really laid it out there. I was so embarrassed to lay out some of my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Really vulnerable for me to admit, especially because I had a belief system that believed God was all loving. And so I was so embarrassed to try to say, I can't seem to come through this darkness. I'm really feeling
Mm-hmm.
trapped here. And he did the worst thing he could have. Yeah, he was very lacking in skillfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, when I sought all this external help, and internally I had a wound that was hiding the truth, I gave up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I thought, it probably would be better if I wasn't in body anymore. I didn't think I was going to go to hell. My belief was I would simply return to spirit and get healed there. That was my belief, like
Yeah.
I would return to the arms of love, and whatever was fundamentally trapping me,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't trying to escape. I had really tried so hard, and I was so young. I mean, I was
Mm-hmm.
20 at that point. I was so young,
Yeah.
and there was some early childhood trauma that was pretty dramatic, not towards me, but that I was witness of.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't in a culture at that time that supported healthy processing around those things. So
Yeah.
I just happened to be in an environment that I know many people experience. And what happened when I overdosed was I left my body and I was absorbed in God's source. And as you know, there are no words that could describe the fullness of being, the spaciousness of being, the love that I was a part of and I was individually.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced myself as love, and no distinction between myself as love and love itself as all spaciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there was a personal quality to it. There was a relational quality for me to it. I didn't find myself in an alternate universe. I found myself literally in an expanse that was all dark and all light all at once. There were no forms. I didn't look at anything, or I didn't see angels, or it was all of it all at once with no definition, and yet the fullness of all beingness.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible. And I think the strongest quality that describes it isn't even love. I felt the quality of complete freedom because I was fully intelligent and fully love.
Mm-hmm.
And it washed, again, like that 5-year-old experience of wherever I was at that moment in my life, it washed all concerns about me as a personality.
Mm-hmm.
It healed it in a root level. And it was incredible. And with that was a deepening in the knowing of the nuance of what spirit is and what spirituality is and what form is and what form isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And
Very.
in that fullness, after the whole experience, something of the divinity or the source or the God source, both as me but towards me, gave me this freedom of choice. They were like, do you want to go back into your body or not?
Mm-hmm.
And I was aware that both choices were I was in full freedom, and both were good.
Mm-hmm.
It was so wonderful. And it gave me the wonderful opportunity to check in with the personality part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And the personality part in me, almost like a child, definitely like a child, was like, no, you know what? I think I want to go back. But it wasn't in response to a call or a mission or a this or a that. It was the clear place that I believe we're meant to come to.
Mm-hmm.
We are here because we are loved into existence.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough. That's it. That's everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the freedom of recognizing that on the individual level, I was like, this seems like fun. I want to go back.
It is. It's a beautiful. It's a beautiful thought that you were that, and I think that uh, what spirit, because I connect with spirit, and what spirit is telling me is they knew what your answer was going to be.
That's
Because, that you Yeah, what I'm getting is that you always, because you knew at such a young age that you were a part of this, coming back was knowing you were coming back with this love that you knew was there. Um, you know, but you're just so, you know, I'm getting such a special, you were always so special. And, you know, so you coming back and being able to share that story was going to be so helpful for others, is what they're saying.
Oh,
And,
thank you.
you know, and there, yeah, you know, that's why this is gonna have to be more than one. But so when you came back, um, so you're in your early 20s, you're like about 20 when this happened, is that correct?
19.
19.
Mhm.
And then I know we won't be able to go through the whole story of um, the time that you were in the monastery, and but when did that start to? What happened when you first came back, and then when did that thought start to come in?
Right. And it was really interesting because the moment I came back into my body, my mystical experiences became my daily bread.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas before they were happening frequently, were always these distinctions of them happening. Now it was like I was walking in a sea of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And any fear of facing any part of me, because what happened was there was this knowing that there were things for me to learn as well
Mm-hmm.
about even the why I'd move into such a deep state of self-hatred. Like
Mm-hmm.
what, not just analyze it,
I
but the
know.
grasping of it. And then in
Mm-hmm.
addition, I had moved into such a deep place of surrender. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was undaunted. I mean, there was nothing that, I mean, when, in that experience coming back into my body, I was set on fire. And I began experiencing some unique uh, characteristics of what this was like. And how I can term it is there was a sense I was being pursued by the beloved. I would be taken into these deep states of presence and bliss. But what would happen is it'd be like a fire rising up. It would be like a fire of being desired by the divine and a fire of desire for the divine. It was very relational.
Mm-hmm.
And my crown chakra, which I didn't know chakras back then, would open up and this
Mm-hmm.
flood of white light would just whoosh. And I'd be taken into these states for endless periods of time. And a lot of multidimensional, parallel universe, bilocation, miracles, visions, synchronicity, illuminations. Everything was just lining up. And it was like I was in this, you almost think of the Matrix and when he's getting downloaded
Mm-hmm.
the programs and all of a sudden he knows Kung
Yes.
Fu. And all of a sudden, that's all this was just
Mm-hmm.
instantaneously from when I was 19 up to when I was about 23. And during that time, probably when I was about 21, oh, it's so beautiful. It makes me want to even tear up now because I'm leading a retreat in Spain next. I'm leaving in 5 days for it. I I was in Santa Cruz, and by the way, I did open myself to like all forms of therapy, and but that was fantastic. That was a lovely component, but the deeper healing for me was happening with ritual and moments of solitude. But that was
Mm-hmm.
undeniably powerful part.
And you're together.
Yes. And so I was back in Santa Cruz and I wanted to find a spiritual director because I knew I was young. I was not confused about what was happening because it was really clear that I was healing and growing and changing. And I didn't have doubts that what was happening was of God, quote unquote. But something within me was like, but I should still have a spiritual guide and mentor and director. I should still have somebody that is my confidant in this. And if you're listening, I supported. I am a spiritual mentor for many, and
Mhm.
nothing like having somebody walk with you on your journey
Right.
and mirror to you
Mhm.
what spirit is doing and saying. It's just so
Mhm.
such a gift. So I was looking around, and I was not finding anybody that had any contemplative experience that could relate to the things that were happening within me.
Mhm.
And I finally got this is the funniest story, Bernadette. I got this recommendation of this man that was reputed to be this amazing contemplative spiritual director in San Jose, California. And I drove the hour to visit with him, and we sat down and he served tea, and it was really sweet. And I was awkward because I'm like, what do I even say? Like,
Exactly. What do you say to somebody you want to be your spiritual,
right, right. Like, what do you say? And I was so young, and like, so I thought, what I'll do is I'll just share one of my daily experiences. And what I did is I shared this experience that literally happened every single day. I would walk into this mission chapel, and the moment I crossed the threshold, the moment I can even feel it happening now, in the presence of the vortex of the energy, in the power of the Eucharist, in the conspiracy of the divine, I would have this crown chakra whoosh, and I would be what is popularly called slain in the spirit. And I would easily find my way to a stall, but I would be taken into these. Oh, it was so wonderful. But everything in me was taken up in it. And I would be gone to the environment around me for long periods of time. I wouldn't be aware if somebody was next to me, not next to me. I would be taken to all these other states and realms. And then at a certain point, in a way, I didn't leave my body because it felt full bodied, but I was experiencing all of this. But in a way, I would come back to the awareness of my physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And it was beautiful. And I was being really healed through these things happening every day. And others around me would notice that I would become like a radiant light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
They would speak to me afterwards, or if they got near me, things would happen for them. And so I knew what was happening was a spirit. So I shared this story with him because I'm like, what else can I do but just kind of like describe what's happening? And he looked at me and he said, "Are you sure you're not falling asleep?" Yes, yes. So I started laughing, like, and I stopped laughing quickly because I didn't want to be disrespectful, but it was so almost ludicrous, really.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I had nothing to lose. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, the opposite is true. I have never felt so alive in my life and so awake in my life. That was my response. So when I left him, it was another one of those moments of just, well, I'm going to give up, you
Yeah.
know. If you want me to have a spiritual director, put somebody in my path because I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Well, the next day, my housemate says to me, "Do you want this book? I'm done with it. I think you might really like it." And he places in my hands the autobiography of Teresa of Avila.
Ah.
And I open it. I could feel it right when I could feel her. And I sat down and I opened the page and I started reading. And I'm weeping because she is describing all the experiences that I was having.
Mm-hmm.
And she began to show up for me as my spirit, not so much my spiritual director, more like a friend
Mm-hmm.
that got me. And
Mm-hmm.
what happened then is she's Carmelite. So what happened then, I got curious about Carmelites. And then as the universe would have it, I don't know how much longer later, it could have been a month, it could have been a couple months, I don't know. But in that period, around when I was 21, another book got put into my hands, Therese of Lisieux,
Mm-hmm.
a late 1800s Carmelite. And I began
Mm-hmm.
Therese, and fire rose up within me. I read her book within a night, and it so burned upon my heart, I could quote it almost from anywhere. And what happened is the Carmelites kept showing up. So I started getting curious, not curious enough to look into it. And this is pre-computer. If you're listening to this, pre-computer. Yeah. Like I'm jumping online. What is a Carmelite? You know, like where's a monastery? What's a monastery? Even though, you know, you grow up Catholic, a lot of times, even in our own traditions, we're not aware of the mystery schools and the traditions. And
so, yes, it's 100%. Yes.
Right? I'm sure you can relate. I'd love to hear your stories time, but since you're asking me to tell stories. So long story short, the Carmelites became really close friends. And I began to long to be in a monastery like them because I was so on fire with love for the divine that I, in a very simple way, I wanted more. It's when you're in love with a human being, you just want to be with them. You want to hear their voice. You want to learn about what they love. I was taken, I was smitten. Well, I didn't search it out. I just became curious and was in that. And then I had a friend who became a housemate, but she was just a friend at that time. And she's like, well, do you want to go hiking? This was a Pentecost weekend, May 22nd weekend. Do you want to go hiking about an hour and a half south of here? I grew up in Carmel. She said, and there's a Carmelite monastery down there. We could go to Mass Saturday morning and then leave for our hike. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a monastery? Yeah. You know, so I had no idea. So we went down early Saturday morning. We went to the liturgy. The moment I walked into the public part of that chapel, I was like, She and I knelt up front, and like what happened many times in my life, I was taken into this deep state. What would happen during these rituals would be God would take me into a state where it was just me and God. Everything was just me and God. So when the reading happened, it was God whispering it. When the sermon happened, it was God speaking it into my heart. And this would happen the whole time. So I got deeply absorbed in this liturgy. She did too, but I don't know in what way. And when the words of the sermon happened, I mean, he was so, tears are just rolling down. I don't remember what he said, but tears are rolling down. It's interpenetrating me. And then the Mass ends and we're there praying a little bit. And then we're like, well, we should get going on our hike. So we leave. The place had been packed because it was a Saturday, which was popular. The whole front section of the monastery where the steps are, and that was packed with people, joyfully, blah, 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 just going on. So she and I are trying to make our way through quietly just to get through. Well, over towards the left, and she remembers this date because I talked to her a couple of years ago, because I put the story in my latest book. She remembers this happening. This priest starts pushing through the crowds to get to us. And as soon as he gets to us, she and I are kind of embarrassed. He gets to us and he stops and he looks at me. And he's really moved. And he says, promise me you'll pray for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I'm going to let you finish. I can get started on a whole. That's amazing.
So much, right? So what's happening is there's such a beautiful story to this period in my life because it was such a honeymoon period. And I don't think I could have gotten away from becoming Carmelite if I had tried. I didn't want to try. I didn't have any resistance at all. So I didn't have to be courted and convinced. I didn't have resistance. I'm a personality that I'm all on board. I rarely am somebody that, I know I hear all these stories, and NDEers and STEers. You're like, oh, I was so resistant. You know, I was like, didn't want to go down that path, or I am so not that. I'm like, take me.
Yeah.
So these kinds of things lasted. They kept going on and on and on and on. And there's beautiful stories that go forward.
Yeah.
And end with me finally 3 years later entering a monastery in North Dakota. And that's where I found my home. And I was so in, I think, like, for most people, for anybody that really has a heart, I loved my family, and I didn't really get that I was leaving my family until I actually got down to the last 2 months before I was going to enter the monastery. It didn't register in my brain that I was actually making a choice that I was going to be not a part of my family rituals anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there was a big piece in me that's like, well, a lot of people move overseas, or, a lot of times family rituals are broken up and life changes and that. So it's not like I would have said no to joining the monastery, but I remember as it got real, it was hard.
Mm.
As much as I was clear as day, it was really hard.
Mm. Time goes by so fast on these.
Yeah.
I want to spend a little time talking about, first of all, what has meant to me, and I want to bring you back on so we can do that part of the story, because I'm fascinated. My confirmation name, my maiden name is Bernadette Margaret Teresa O'Brien. So the Teresa is, yes, so I'm very, very connected to that name in all of its forms. Your experience, it is fascinating to hear it, because I am somebody that had, I'll say, the light version of your experience growing up, where I had these spiritual moments that entered, and I paid attention to them, but I didn't pay attention to them. And it so many things, and I am spirit, my connection with the divine. I think that was the push to bring you, to bring you on. Why I needed this, I wanted to share your story, and I wanted to hear more about your story. It is for somebody out there listening, we all awaken to our spiritual side, to our spiritual awakening differently. And some of us, as you've talked about, it's that big NDE. Have not had an NDE, but that's where the egg cracks open, so to speak. And then some people go on the journey that you have gone on. And what I am wanting is for people to know that this journey could have started a very long time ago. And that there is, looking back as you go through your childhood, as you go through those teenage years, that there may be an inkling about the awakening that is happening then. And then the other part that I want to share, because I want people to know that what the work that you are doing now, that the retreats that you offer, the way that you help people to understand how to go through a spiritual awakening, an opening, knowing that we are all able to do this. And so that is one of the things that I wanted you to share. I know you have a couple of beautiful things coming up, and I know we'll get you back on again soon, but I want to put those thoughts in people's heads for some of the events that you have coming up that they may be able to. I did see one that was in, I know there's one at the end of August, but if there's any in between, just give you that opportunity to share those now.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. I know there's so much there. And when you ask me to share stories are so rich, right? They're so rich. So one story There's enough, and there's so many stories. So right now, most of what I have to offer is all online, which makes it easily accessible. The retreat I have in Spain, I could fit another person. If you're listening right now and you want to show up in 2 weeks, I could fit one more person in, but that's it. I could fit one more person. Uh, and we have, it's a group of 8 right now. I could take a group of 9. Very intimate. It's called Entering the Portal, and it's opening to the mystical poetry of Teresa and John of the Cross, and a tantric Tibetan text called the Radiant Sutras that is very profound. And we're going to the places where the poetry was written, and we're going to allow ourselves to be moved by the encounter with ourselves. I'll be guiding it. There'll be 4 sessions a day that people love, and I love too. So it's not work. It's kind of coming to the banquet. And then regarding connecting with me, I have a newsletter. I have a Patreon account where I give free mystic little videos once a week. And if you pay $11 a month, which is so low, you can be part of things that are more robust. I just finished a 6-week meditation immersion that was rich for us all. A lot of things like that online, an online community. But otherwise, public attendance, I only have a festival where you can come and experience sacred sound. And
That's so
yeah, oh, Bernadette, it is unbelievable. It's a whole weekend of different forms of sacred sound. And that's worth your time if you want to give yourself a little washing with the vibration and frequency of these varieties of sound. So, but other than attending live, the other things I'm hired for are private right now in person. But you can bring me in. If your church or your group, I travel anywhere somebody wants to bring me in. I'm traveling for my book. So my latest is Miracles in the Naked Light.
nice.
Yeah, I have a book of
And I'll make sure that is in the notes, that all of your books are in the notes. It is, I can't say it enough. The guidance that you're able to, I feel it. I do this with clients myself, but I can just feel that deep connection and that ability for you to bring somebody through this this kind of experience. So I just want to say how deeply grateful that I am. And I really want to hear more. One of the things that I'm wanting to do with this podcast is to bring people together for these discussions, because there are so many different ways that people awaken. But this is such a beautiful, your story is so beautiful, and I'm truly deeply interested in that your monastery experience from that spiritual level, like, because you're hidden away, you're in that, and what were those experiences like? So I wish we could just keep going for another hour, but
I know, and I would love to turn it into a conversation, and I welcome it. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, and that's really what I want to do, is to bring this into conversations back and forths, and so that people have the opportunity to ask the questions that maybe they've experienced something and they want a little clarity about it, or they want to know, could you think of that as being a spiritual experience, or so this is where the evolution, hopefully, of this will go.
I love it. And again, like you, I'm available for private sessions. And I don't know that I think that it's so underrated, the value of having someone that can reflect back to you
Yes.
the way spirit is moving within you. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we respond to affirmation as human beings,
Mm-hmm.
we have something that reflects within us and reflects back to us something that's very life-giving,
Yeah.
healing, transformative, awakening. We on conscious and unconscious levels, we surrender even more into it. our process of awakening speeds up. It's like,
Yeah. And I, I want to leave everybody with that word surrender. It is an amazing thing that it is, we think of surrender as like we give up, and it's the opposite. And so the next time we're together, we're going to unpack that along with your journey at the monastery and how then you came out and what you started doing. So yes, so deeply grateful that you were here today, Kimberly. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation, Bernadette. Thank you.
Yes, we will see you soon.